listening? Are you listening? Damn.
What's up, y'all? Hailstorm here, adding my 2 cents to the miracle effect. And we're going to tackle reverse racism today. I think we'll use a story to help us with that one. So today I want to talk about a fairy tale, The Three Little Pigs. The Three Little Pigs is a very interesting fairy tale because it helps us to identify some very important values. And when you first look at the Three Little Pigs, you think, oh, okay, they're going to be talking about these 3 pigs. One built this house on a bad foundation out of straw. Another one built the house out of sticks. The other one built the house out of bricks. And there was this big bad wolf that was coming after the 3 little pigs. And the wolf was able to infiltrate the first pig, right? Because it was a weak foundation. Was able to infiltrate the second pig. It took him a little more time and more effort, but he was able to infiltrate the second one. But the third one is the one that the wolf could not get to. And I think that that is a very important story. Yes, it is important to have a strong foundation, and that is usually the moral to the story. But let's think about that in terms of being black in America. And the scenario of the 3 little pigs and the wolf. Now, the wolf, in my opinion, represents systemic racism. Systemic racism was put in place to ensure that slavery could exist, to ensure that whites who own property would maintain power in America. And a lot of times that system has been put in place, and it has a very strong foundation. You need to understand that systemic racism that built a system that could support slavery was not something that happened overnight. They started with manipulating the language, because you had something that was inherently evil, and you had to convince people that it was okay. And you had to convince people who believed in God that it was okay. So you had to get God-fearing people to give a stamp of approval on killing, robbing, raping other human beings. In order to do that, you have to lay a very strong foundation of manipulation. You have to understand that it is a psychological game more than anything else. The whites had to be tricked. The blacks had to be tricked. Everyone in the equation had to be tricked into submission to the system that set up a place for slavery to exist. And in order to do that, they had to manipulate the language. The key is always in the language, the word choice. What are the words they're choosing? How can I associate those words in your mind with action to make it okay? It's called cognitive dissonance. It means that you are able to look at one thing a certain way and look at something that is exactly the same in another way and hate it when it happens over here and be okay with it when it happens over here. The same acts, but you are able to disassociate or associate them with different moral values and meanings. And in order to do that, the language has to be manipulated. And so to think that slavery ended because there was a war and the slaves were told that they no longer had to work for massa. And some people went away and they were quote unquote free, that it ended there. It didn't end there. The only way it would have ended there is if the soldiers came in and wiped out and arrested and penalized all of those who participated in those heinous crimes. That did not happen. This was a civil war. These were people who were fighting family members and friends from other sides of the same country. And you had a president who really didn't want to end slavery. He just wanted to improve the economy. And they believed that an industrial revolution would put America in a better position. They were also suffering from slavery revolts, in which black people now were learning how to read, were learning how to write, they were learning their way, and they were realizing that their life mattered too. And it wasn't about how many you killed, it was about who you killed. So them being so close to the white people and deciding that their lives mattered, they were killing people who were close by. And those people had friends and family members who didn't like it. And so in many instances, yes, the slaves were punished en masse for that. But once they revolted, you could not get that family member back who was killed by the slaves. So don't think that the plantations were not suffering from the slave revolts. There was suffering on both ends. But let's get back to the language. So in order for slavery to exist, there has to be a foundation of language and words and associations to allow that to happen. And so why are the three little pigs relevant in the situation? Well, systemic racism is a system based on bullying black folks in particular. And so when black people try to protect themselves or react to racism, they are often accused of reverse racism. When black people attempt to have their own businesses and say, hey, listen, let's support black businesses because we've been left out of the equation for so long. We've had inventors and businessmen who have been hung and didn't get credit and have never received reparations, and they never gave us the money for our contributions, and they're living off of wealth that should have been paid to us as descendants. But since that didn't happen, as a response to racism, let's try to gather our pennies together. And when you start to gather your pennies together, you try to protect yourselves and build a strong foundation, because every time you try to build that house, it got blown down by the big bad wolf called systemic racism. Jim Crow, lynchings, mass incarceration, the miseducation of the Negro. And so after 400 years, you start to realize, man, where are our good white friends who are supposed to protect us from all of this going on. Well, the truth is, the good white friends have been psychologically abused and miseducated as well. And so they cannot protect you because they too are being bullied by the system. Systemic racism does not work for anybody but the top 1 to 3% of the population. After that, people are still struggling. The only difference is that the way it's set up is that there's a hierarchy of class. And so these people get all of the perks. Your top 1%, which is white, lily white. Then you get into your 5% and you may see a brown face, maybe. But below that, whites and other quote unquote races, they still have some perks. They get to make an attempt at the American dream without having to worry about being pulled over by the police and being distracted by the criminal justice system. And so they're able to see some perks and they're able to say, hey, well, at least I can make a decent living and still have my freedom. But down here, the blacks always have a fear or concern that no matter where they reach, no matter what obstacles they overcome, that there's a catch-all over here with the criminal justice system, very petty criminal justice system, waiting to snatch away their freedom. And so, or snatch away their life, or take away the lives of their loved ones. And so they're operating in that fear. This system's not really working for anyone. It's a system based on greed, a system based on abundance, in which you realize that there's enough for everybody. That's a much more powerful system. You just make a choice to access abundance. And how do you do that? We'll do another tape about that. But it's all about knowing where your finances and resources come from. And it's not from this system. It's not from the white man. It's not from the corporations. They're not the hand that feeds you. You can bite them if they hurt you. It's knowing that everything that I receive comes from God. And it's making those tough choices to listen to self as opposed to following a corrupt system. But the reality of it now is that this systemic racism that puts blacks at the bottom forces us to either try to ignore it, act like it's not happening, try to be the exception to the rule, try to be the, those few who make it through as best you can, try to fight it head on, or try to collectively respond in a way in which you say, listen, let's come together. But the way the language is designed and saying that, oh, you're being a reverse racist. Well, let's talk about reverse. Is it not a good thing to reverse racism? Isn't that what we want to do? Absolutely, because racism is bad. Racism is not, clearly, is not working for us. And so to reverse it, that's actually replacing and replenishing to the people who were the victims of it or the survivors, replenishing what you stole from them, what you taken from them. And so if you really are good white folks, if you really do care, if you really are interested in protecting those who have been harmed, then you allow that group to come together to build without your interference of language like, oh, you're a reverse racist, because you're trying to protect yourself, like the three little pigs. They had to go to that home with a strong foundation, and they had to protect themselves from the bully. Now, if there was another wolf who happened to be a vegetarian and who happened to feel like the big bad wolf was really a big bad wolf, then that wolf who happened to be a vegetarian would get it. That wolf would understand. That wolf would say, you know what? My brother has wronged you. I don't need to come in because I understand you have some trust issues. But what I will do is I will spank the big bad wolf. I will tell that wolf that even though I get to walk around free and you're not interested in eating me, you eating those pigs is messing up our karma. You're not going to attack the pigs and say, well, you should let me in because you're wrong for closing your door. You understand what the big bad wolf is capable of, and you understand that in order for you to come together with those pigs, that they have to have strength and protection, and they have to devise a plan so that the wolf can't get to them. And we as people have to come together and devise a plan, a 25-year plan. We need to put a deadline on racism and create a safe haven for ourselves and reverse this racism and establish a system of abundance so that we can come out and take care of the world the way it is designed, because civilization started in Africa. We're all brothers and sisters, and we all have something to contribute. But when someone responds to the bully, when black folks respond to the bullies and they say, hey, we need to protect our people, if you're not a bully, and if you understand that words like reverse racism, and languaging like that is harmful, then you will let them do what they need to do. But word to the wise for the pig. You don't have time to wait and see if this wolf is a vegetarian or not. They've had 400 years to get it together, and it's going backwards. And so it's time for us to start unapologetically being black petty, protecting ourselves, protecting our resources, educating ourselves, getting to know who we really are, knowing that we've been fed a lie. And protecting our children from the big bad one. So those are my thoughts. Adding my 2 cents to the miracle effect. And what is the miracle effect? The miracle effect means that it's our responsibility to participate in media shaping, to tell our own story, to give our perspective, because if we don't, we will allow the big bad wolf to shape our story and to manipulate us into accepting a system of racism that has never meant us anything. So those are my thoughts. This is Hellstorm. I want to thank you for listening. Peace.